What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. And tonight, boy, do we have a good show tonight lined up. I hope you guys are doing well. I thank each and every one of you for joining us so far on the stream. Let's get caught up with the chat before we jump into our special guest, Jesse Johnson from Without Papers Pizza. Now, if you haven't been following the news or if you're not aware of who Jesse is, let me tell you one thing or another. This is a true hero who stood up in the name of unfair treatment and discrimination during the COVID-19 lockdowns, especially with his business here in Calgary. He stood for his beliefs and was prominently featured on outlets like Rebel News, where he defied the lockdown orders. And he in particularly defied requesting people's vax statuses when they were required at restaurants. And ultimately, it cost Jesse his business. It cost him a lot more than that. His ability to make a living, his livelihood. We're going to get into that tonight. We're going to bring him onto the show. Really happy to see him come on the channel. I've been wanting to do this interview for a while, so let's get caught up with the chat, and then we'll bring him in. Rob, welcome in. We're all a little unacceptable, Rob, but thank you for joining us. Thank you for being a part of our unacceptable small fringe minority here on the channel. Can I get a larger fringe? I seem to be putting on weight. There's never too much. Those are emojis, I'm guessing. Face, red heart, red shape. Tammy, welcome in. Mr. Sticky Fingers, welcome into the stream as well. Ned, welcome in. Trudeau's a commie. Hello to all you racists. Well, I don't know how racist we are, but hey, that's debatable. Rob, welcome in. Joanne, how you doing? Drunken Cooking, welcome into the stream. Hope you're doing well. Decoy, welcome in as well. It's good to see you guys all. And is this live? It is live. I don't understand, Patty, why they haven't given you a notification. I think I'm being shadow banned because I seem to just pile on to people like Rachel Notley, Justin Trudeau, and Jody Gondek. But I guess YouTube doesn't like it very much. But without further ado, ladies and gents, let's bring in our guest tonight. I don't want to leave him waiting any longer because what a tale he has to tell. Let's bring in our esteemed guest, Jesse Johnson. Welcome to the show, Jesse. How are you?
I'm excellent, sir. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. Now, just maybe give people a little bit of a backstory. You owned Without Papers Pizza in Calgary. How long were you in business for before the COVID lockdowns began?
I had a location for 20 years in the neighborhood of Inglewood. My first restaurant was Sugo that we opened in 2001. In 2011, I opened up Without Papers. So we were in business for 10 years before they shut me down for feeding a Canadian.
Right. Okay. Well, multiple Canadians, I guess. But now during lockdowns, now just kind of give us a little bit of a timeline. Lockdowns were instituted. Did you shut down when shutdowns were requested at first, or were you open the entire time?
No, we stayed open the entire time. A restaurant is, like a big rolling rock, and once that rock stops moving, it's very hard to get it to start moving again. And so we stayed open. I think we might have closed, the first day. I think we just closed, and there was nothing going on anyways, just to get our head about everything. But no, we stayed open the entire time. We actually did well during the apocalypse. Our model, although prior to the COVID pandemic, our maybe takeout and delivery business was maybe 10 to 15% of our revenue. We were quickly able to transition into it being 100% of our revenue at first. So yeah, we didn't suffer as much as a great many restaurants, who I pleaded with at the beginning to, let's put a stop to this nonsense. It was sinful and against the very ethos of my creed that they try to destroy dining and the restaurant and the hospitality industry in general. You like to go skiing, I like to go golfing, that guy likes to read books, but there's one thing that we all do together, we all eat together, and they want to take that away because when you eat together, you also converse together. So it was purposeful, I think, and it was unfair to the industry.
Right. Now, I've always said that small business is the backbone of every economy because really at the end of the day, big box stores, they don't have the same experience that a brick and mortar yields, I think, for people on a personal level. Now, myself, growing up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the majority of places that we used to go to as a family were mostly brick and mortar or mom and pop shops. I guess franchises weren't as common in the 80s and 90s as they are now. So to see government really pushed to shut down these businesses, I found it always really odd that hey, you can't go to a restaurant, even when they brought in the vax passes. You can't go to a restaurant and sit separated from people, keeping your distance, but you can all cram into a Walmart.
Yeah.
That just to me was the ultimate hypocrisy. So now I know that multiple businesses, like you said, were affected, and it wasn't just you guys. And it's definitely sad to see the aftermath. I mean, anytime you go up and down any of the downtown streets or any local neighborhoods where they had small businesses, you see the closed sign up or people selling off their equipment, and their staff are looking for jobs. So how far into the lockdowns before you started receiving, I guess you could say, visits from bylaw or police?
First day of lockdown was March 16th, 2020. On September 20th, 2021, they introduced the vaccine passport in Calgary. On
Mhm.
that very same day, first thing in the morning, I made an announcement that I would not be participating in the medical segregation of healthy Albertans, and that I believe you and everybody else on this block is equal, regardless of what you decided to inject into your body, and that it was never for me to judge you. The good Lord will judge, not myself. So what are we talking? 16 months basically. I complied with everything. I was a hero during the
Mhm.
apocalypse. We stayed open when others closed. We fed people who were afraid to come outside, and got their skip the dishes and all the other programs and things like that. We
Mhm.
wore masks reluctantly. And we did everything that was called for. The only thing that I was not going to do was judge anybody for anything that you've done. It is against the very ethos of my profession.
Right.
It was a disgusting perversion of hospitality, and quite frankly, I'm ashamed of every single restaurant that participated. I was made example of, and after they destroyed me, no one dared speak out against the regime. All of
Right.
them were bought essentially with communist money. So every restaurant in Canada had their customers taken away from them purposely
Mhm.
by the government, and then told to just hang on. Then they were given a little morsel to bite onto with a little bit of money here, and then a few more weeks and a little bit more money, and yeah, next thing you know, you're completely dependent upon the government in order to stay alive, literally to stay
Right.
alive. There's not one single restaurant that came to my defense in all of Canada. Not one.
Wow.
Not one spoke out for me. Do you know what I mean? Others made their own little things, and did whatever it is that they could do, but no one dared speak for me, because if they did, they would certainly receive the same retribution that I did, which is to be destroyed. You know, we were pillars in our community. Honestly, we were like loved. My restaurant was special. I learned a long time ago that the restaurant industry, although our food was exquisite, that it's not what most people remember. What most people remember is the feeling, the energy, the chi, and the experience. And it's much more than just did your waitress smile to you. It's literally that first step in, and our first step. People typically did a pirouette and looked all
Mhm.
around and just soaked it all in: the music, the vibe, the food, the people. It was incredible. We hired every misfit in Calgary and turned them into players. We gave when nobody asked. We did so quietly. We loved the community that we were in. We helped gentrify it. When I moved into Inglewood with Sugo in 2001, there was crack whores and addicts on the street, and yeah, we were a large part of gentrifying that neighborhood, and I love that neighborhood. I raised my children in that neighborhood. I helped raise many children in the neighborhood, and half the kids in the neighborhood first job was through me. It
Mhm.
was yeah, it was really sad to see the worst of humanity, and not so much the worst, but just the fear. And I used to try to explain to people, I'm like, listen, if you are afraid to speak your voice, to express your opinion, I mean, you live under tyranny. And look what's happening now, my brother. I'm literally, I'm burning on the street, across from you, and you
Mhm.
won't even come over to say hi. It was crazy, the fear that existed. It really was.
Yeah. I fully agree. So I'm not much of a, like, I don't own a small business in the sense that in the restaurant business, but I can definitely understand how puzzling that must be, especially when you look at Kensington. Now, for anybody watching the show, it's not from Calgary, that doesn't understand what Kensington is. It's kind of a little trendy area of Calgary where most people, I know a lot of people that live in Kensington that don't even own a vehicle. They do everything on foot. A lot of trendy shops and restaurants and different places to go hang out, coffee shops kind of scattered all around the neighborhood. A very community based section of town. So I think out of anything, and I think that's what staggered me the most when I seen your establishment on Rebel News, was that that's such a community driven area of town that it's surprising to me, and it's even daunting for me to hear today that nobody came to your aid or agreed. I mean, I've always said there's power in numbers, and it just shocks me that more small businesses didn't want to stand up to the tyranny that was going on in the city and police acting against the Charter of Rights.
It was staggering for me to comprehend, to be honest with you, and I still haven't. I don't know that I ever will. But you know, it's weird. This thing has definitely affected me in a great many ways. And you know, I think back as to what happened, and I'm actually. It's not the people who cast stones at me that I'm angry at. It's the people that did nothing. You know, the people that
Yeah.
watched me burn, fighting for their
Yep.
freedoms that they didn't even realize I was doing. You know, I
Right.
wasn't anti-vaccine at first. Honestly, I wasn't, although I am most certainly now. But at first, I was just, you know, me personally, I was like, listen, you know, I'm not getting vaccinated for something I don't even believe exists. You know, I mean,
Right.
that was just my take on it. I was like, you guys do whatever you want to do. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
sitting here looking with my eyes and hearing with my ears and, you know, feeling with my gut. And I don't see anything of this that you're referring to. I wasn't even on social media very much. You know, I mean,
Right.
most of what I got was just from observation, you know, like of
Hmm.
what's going on when you go to the store, and just it was insanity. The propaganda was truly the most impressive feat of pushing information that I think's ever been performed in the history of mankind. It's and may never be well, I'm sure it will be again, actually. But yeah, it was truly astounding, you know. And you talk about why people didn't speak up, and you know, I look back on it now, and the censorship, you know, I didn't realize that existed, you know, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all these things where, you know, you say something and it's just scrubbed. You talked about being shadow banned earlier. I didn't have no idea what the hell shadow banned is, you know, and then you realize, you know, you've got 40,000 followers, but nobody hears your voice.
Yes.
It's, you know, it really was Orwellian dystopian. And yeah, yeah, it surprises me that more people don't see it. I think that it's one of those things it's just easier to hide something, you know, right in front of you, and make it so obvious that, you know, they don't even see it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and we've seen that more and more when you look at the aftermath of the Freedom Convoy, when you look at the aftermath, even again, when I talk about where businesses have ended up after lockdowns have ended. Now, I definitely think that actions that you put forward, as well as the Freedom Convoy, as well as multiple others that stood up against the measures, are what helped end the measures, especially in Alberta, because I believe they were one of the first provinces to pull back.
Well, I'll speak directly to that, you know, and I saw a tweet earlier where somebody mentioned, you know, protest is ineffective. And to an extent, I agree. But, you know, when we started out, we were against the vaccine passport. It's my belief that the vaccine passport was the catalyst for the Freedom Convoy, the
Mhm.
Ottawa protest, and also, you know, the Coutts border blockade. It most certainly was. And that information is, you know, typically the politicians don't want to talk about that passport. Everybody knows it was, you know, it was bad.
Mhm.
But that passport was rescinded directly because of the actions taken of some farmers, some truckers, some
Yep.
Mennonites, and some pissed off, you know, pizza boys who just got destroyed for professing the love of all.
Right.
And it was rescinded because of that. And people say, oh, you know, it's the science, Jesse, the science. I'm just like, no, man, there was no
No.
science, you know. Yeah, a bunch of people got together and held the border to the United States of America, you know,
Yeah.
and said, listen, we demand to be equal again. We are healthy and we are human. Fuck off, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, it truly was beautiful. So yeah, yeah. And I got off topic. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say, I think so. So those basically 3 years were unprecedented. I think it's nothing. At least I ever thought I'd live to see. And what surprised me more than anything, much like you say, was the behavior of individuals. I know people that lost friends during the pandemic based on their views. I know people who had to lie to family members just in order to see them about their vaccine status. I know, all these terrible stories that it's hard to believe that when you hear about people like even Gina Carano comparing the actions similar to those that went on in Germany in 1945, and people got upset with it. And it's, well, how can you really, aside from sewing patches to our jackets, how can you really say it's any different? It boggled my mind that Canada, of all places, was full of such hatred and such division. And still to this day, um, COVID aside, it seems like since 2019, it's just taken a huge ramp up in terms of how everybody views one another. Yet one thing I found very heartwarming was while all that was going on, turning on the television and once again seeing your business out in the streets. I believe you guys were giving free pizza out at one point to folks that were
The
standing
last week
outside
we were open, we
protesting.
were giving away pizza for free. They
Yeah,
came and
in
shut us down on
minus
Thanksgiving
30.
weekend. No,
Yeah.
no, it was still
Oh, that
nice
wasn't the
actually
minus
that
30.
last week.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a protest from minus 30. But we were giving away pizza for free. And one time we had two little picnic tables out front that I had made myself, by the way, and we had
Yeah.
harvested the wood from like the dump, and we were just pretty. Anyways, the cops came and confiscated our picnic tables out front that we were handing pizzas out on. And so the next day we put out milk crates so that people could, we didn't have to put the pizzas directly on the ground, and perhaps people could
Right.
sit down and eat. And the cops came and confiscated our milk crates.
Right.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
it was insanity. Yeah.
So this started out with them revoking your business license. I remember hearing that. They took the business license away, and then you just continued to operate without it, which again is very commendable. What led to, remind me again, and just paint a picture for us as to how it went from them removing your license to the day you came and the store was shut down altogether.
So I said September 20th, I won't do it. I got back to Calgary on, I believe, the 23rd. On the 24th, I reached out to Rebel News once I learned that I wasn't going to get any sort of fair shake from, CBC, CTV, the Herald, etc. And the day after, Sid Frizard showed up. I think they rescinded my business license on. Actually, I'm trying to think. I think they did them all on the same day, if I remember correctly, or they all happened within 24 hours. But my business license, my liquor license, and my food permit, all of them pulled, within a short period of time. And I'd never had that happen before. It was 20 years I had my licenses. I still know my liquor license number by heart. But that happened on the 1st, and it's hard to explain the atmosphere that existed in that restaurant for those last 2 weeks. It was surreal almost. I mean, the pressure was crazy. We disconnected the phone because we didn't want to get any more of the calls telling us, that we're despicable people who were killing grandma and stuff like that. And half the staff that we had quit under the pressure, and it was just this ragtag bunch of us that were just holding on at the end. And it was a fight or flight sort of thing. And I honestly, I was afraid, man. Like I was really afraid. I was sleeping in the restaurant for the last bit because I had met with a friend of mine on the police, and who was, well, anyways, he was like, listen, Jess, they're going to arrest you, and you need to, and I'm like, well, where are they going to arrest me? He's like, well, probably when you leave here. Right. So, don't drive home. And I started sleeping there. And yeah, the last night that I slept there, it was about 4:30, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun was just breaking, and I wasn't sleeping well, right? I was scared. Honestly, I was worried that people were going to show up, and then all of a sudden I started hearing, the eggs coming on the window, and I thought for sure it was a mob out front. I really did, because it was I'm getting up out of sleep, right? And I went to the window, and I still remember looking outside, and it was one guy, in the middle of the night with 24 eggs and a mask on. And we made eye contact, and I looked at him. I'm just like, we're fighting for you too, man. I'm going, we love you, right? And he dropped his eggs and he walked away. And Yeah, so they closed us down on October 9th. So the last week from the 3rd or from the 4th to the 9th, we were literally giving away pizzas for free.
Wow.
And
And that was 2021, correct?
That was 2021, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was the Saturday, it was October 9th, it was Thanksgiving weekend, and there was a freedom rally taking place in Central Memorial Park. And I had gotten word that they were going to come to Without Papers after the rally or at some point during the rally. And so I sat in the window, and just waiting for them, and all like everything that the scope of what I had done was just sort of like, becoming very real to me, right? I was just like, holy shit, like this is insane. I can't believe this is happening. But I sat there waiting, and then nobody came, and I just I broke. I was like, oh my god,
Wow.
like what's going on? So I got a friend of mine to just take me out. I was just like, come on, Whitey, like just take me for a ride. Like I need to get out of here. And then I had to take a nap.
Yeah.
And so I went to my house because there was no way I was going to be able to nap there. And while I was taking a nap, the police came to my door, and I saw the lights going. I was like, oh my god, here they are, right? And I opened the door, and I had to go to the washroom, and I was just like, man, I'm not like I don't want to go to pee, and the guy, I opened the door, and the cop's there, and I'm like, hey man, can I just go to the washroom first? He's like, oh no, Jesse, we're not here to arrest you. We just want to make sure you're not going to kill yourself or anything, right? And I was just like, oh, well, isn't that, very kind of you? But I realized
Mhm.
now, like what had happened was I was holed up in that restaurant with Sid from Rebel, and we were just you're just waiting. It was an
Yeah.
odd assignment for Sid. I bet he was there with me for 2 weeks. I
Wow.
think like roughly 2 weeks. And every day, and we would just we were just in the restaurant. It was crazy. We were throwing stuff out the windows, all the merch and stuff like that. But when I left, and then they ascertained that I was in my house. And then the cops came, to make sure that that was the case. And I think as well, like, to stay with me. And then at
Yeah.
just before that, Sid had left the restaurant because it was Thanksgiving, and
Right.
for whatever reason, like we just didn't think it was going to happen that night. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
nobody did. And
Unreal.
maybe I did subconsciously, and that's why I left. I'm not sure. But Sid left, and then shortly after, the city police escorted Alberta Health Services, City of Calgary officials, AGSC officials, Alberta Health Services officials, marshals, and my landlord, and they gave us 2 hours to get the hell out of there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it was unbelievable,
Unbelievable.
man. Unbelievable, for accepting everyone. I'm the only restaurant in the
Mm.
history of Canada that was shut down for feeding Canadians. I was the only restaurant that was shut down for refusing to enforce the vaccine passport. The only one. There was maybe 2, 3, 4 other ones. I know a Corduroy in
Mhm.
Vancouver, and there was another, but yeah, nobody. No, so few stood up, and I'm the only restaurant that
Yeah.
was ever shut down for it. And I think about it now, and I'm just like, how is that, my punishment for accepting everyone is to lose my 20-year, business that
Yeah.
employed 30 people and supported 2 families. I mean, it was insanity, man. It was just
Yeah.
insanity. Yeah.
Wow. I know there were. I remember seeing stories that Rebel covered for restaurants like in Winnipeg. I believe it was Monster Burger that
Yeah,
for a while
Monstrosity
they.
Burger. I went there. Great
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah. Really nice. I'd been in
They
there a few
closed,
times.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if that was a result
They
of the
closed because
lockdowns,
of
but
the legal battles and the fines. I mean, they
yeah,
literally they
buried
I'm
them.
not saying those they got punished so badly that they had to close. In the restaurant industry, I mean, margins are so razor thin that to incur any extra expenses it's great difficulty.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So walk us through then again, because I do want to get to the court end of things and the legal side of things, but you come to work and the doors are locked. The AHS locks the doors. What were your next steps? Like what happens to Jesse from there?
Dude, that night was um I never went back to the restaurant. That happened, and I got in my car and just started driving. Ended up in Windermere,
Wow.
and I've been here ever since. Um, yeah, it was a crazy time. Sorry, Say that question again. I lost
Well,
track
it was
there.
just more of what happened to you afterwards. Like I was more curious what stopped the restaurant from opening back up when everything was lifted.
Um, Lack of faith, I think.
Yeah.
A great many people placed the responsibility and the fault and blame on me as to what happened. Every single buddy that almost everybody that I knew, family included, thought that I should turn people away who are exactly the same as me. That I should demand to know what you've done with your body in order to come and have a pizza. That I could prevent somebody from coming into my restaurant because they're exactly the same as me. It was mind-boggling, and I'm just like, don't, you guys need to stop blaming me. Like
Yeah.
I know that I snapped. I did, and I think about it now, like how, I replay it every day, 100 times.
Mm.
Yeah, it was stress. Just, I was fearful for my life. I
Wow.
thought that, I was like, okay, so, now I'm not allowed to let people like me into my own restaurant. I'm like, well, what's next? Are they coming? Are they going to come to the door and tie me down, and force me to submit? I couldn't believe it, and that time I was in BC and I was with somebody I'd not seen in a very long time. And I was shocked at what was going on and the masks. And it was, they enacted the Vax Pass a week ahead of time, a week before Alberta. And it was the first time ever in my life that I was discriminated. I was trying to get some soup and, in a ramen joint in an IMO. And, this 18-year-old girl is asking me for my vaccine passport so that I can get a bowl of ramen. I was like, what the hell is going on here? And what was shocking about it was that, she thought there was absolutely nothing wrong with it, that, this was just the way it was. And this is the new normal. And it broke me. And that's
Yeah.
essentially why I spoke out, I guess.
Wow. Well, I want to start by saying that regardless of what comes of the legal proceedings ahead of you, I don't think I speak alone, especially with my chat, because they've been filling it out as this has been going on. You are definitely a hero for what you did, and the fact that there weren't many others like you, again, shocks and surprises me. I think that this city owes you a tremendous apology for what they did to you, as well as those
I
other businesses. I think that um, people definitely, there were, I believe there were people who were scared who overreacted. I've spoken with some who got a little nuts. They didn't really judge people during the pandemic. They were afraid to come out of their homes. They were even afraid after lockdowns ended to remove their masks and stuff. And I've talked to a few friends like that have told me, I got a little nuts and I just believed everything I heard and I'm sorry. Those people I can forgive. It's the ones that really jumped the shark, so to speak, and really went to the extremes that I find particularly difficult to listen to any form of reasoning, to think that somebody, again, especially a Canadian, could get into the mindset to think that they're not only going to discriminate their fellow man, but shut them out and ridicule them for having an opinion, or a preference as to what they put in their bodies is completely mind blowing to me. But I definitely commend you for what you did, Jess. And despite it costing you your business, um, I again think that you are very much a hero for what you did, and I thank you for what you did and what you continue to do. And I think a lot of people forget now that things have been lifted that their lives have gone back to normal. And I think, even my wife was saying one of her friends had forgotten how rough it was. And we've only been away from these lockdowns for just over a year. And people are already comfortable and used to their lives that they've let those things go. But I've often said it when talking about Tamara or Chris Barber, and even yourself. Our pandemic ended, but yours is still ongoing because you've got all these legal troubles now to face and to take on. And what's happening on that front? And maybe if you could enlighten us as much as you can, what's next on that area, or what are you facing?
I go to court on July 29th. I've been charged with 9 offenses, all of them bylaw, City of Calgary bylaw infractions, ranging from failure to check for the vaccine passport, failure to show signage that we're going to check for the vaccine passport, operating without a business license that they, rescinded because I wasn't checking it, liquor
Mm.
license, and then, something else, but all bylaw charges. And my defense is being funded by the Democracy Fund. They've hired Chad Williamson from Williamson Law to represent me. And yeah, I was offered, I don't even know if I can say this or not, but I was offered deals that I turned down. It is my belief that I'm innocent of everything. I stood for the charter. I stood for the Bill of Rights. It
Right.
is unfortunate that the charter is not worth the paper that it's printed on. And in fact, the unvaccinated have no representation within the charter, is my belief. As we just saw recently with that poor woman who wasn't able to get a lung transplant or whatever the
Yes.
case was.
Yep.
And I have hope that that what I'm being charged with, I will be found innocent. I think, well, a few of the things I've been charged with, those laws don't even exist anymore. The vaccine passport doesn't exist. None of this stuff exists. So, in essence, I was shut down for nothing. Is my take on it. So yeah, we're going on July 24th, and we'll see what'll happen. It's funny. A very good friend of mine was Crown prosecution for drug-related affairs in Alberta or in Calgary specifically. I went to quite a few of his trials, mainly because he was my best friend, and secondly because they truly did fascinate me. To go and see a trial that was taking place, and the charter being applied. And I came to have a lot of respect for the charter. I saw many of his clients, who perhaps had a kilogram of cocaine stuck in their moonroof, be found innocent because the charter protected their rights. And when this vaccine passport came out, to me, I was just like, well, that is just absolute bullshit. There's no way.
Hmm.
There's no way I'm doing this. And, there was a part of me that thought, well, you guys really screwed up on this one. If you think
Yep.
about all the other mandates that were put before the passport, we all suffered equally under the oppression, but after the passport, the suffering became disproportionate. Some suffered all and others suffered few. Yeah, it was a complete charter violation. Unfortunately, as I do, that these are your rights unless we decide that it's too dangerous for you to have any rights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I can honestly tell you that my opinion, especially when it comes to these legal battles, and what I've seen is that anytime they come and offer some form of a deal, it usually means you're in a good spot. At least it tells me that they don't have much to stand on. Hopefully, that's the case. I don't want to jinx anything for you, but I'm definitely anxiously waiting to hear what happens from that. And I'm glad
I'm
that
curious to see what they say about me, actually. The
Mhm.
stories that they'll make up that I was jeopardizing mankind itself.
Yeah.
It's really astonishing. I saw Pastor Art. I went to one of his trials, and literally the Crown prosecution likened his speech at the border to the Rwanda genocide. I was like,
Right.
it was unbelievable.
Well, and we haven't seen any of Pastor Art's charges stick yet, especially even Chris Scott over at the Whistle Stop. I know he's been fighting his legal battles,
Yeah,
and
there's a
so
lot
far
of
nothing
precedence that's
stuck.
going to be
So
set here in the next month. A lot of cases like Chris Scott and a few others that are going to be Rebecca Ingram, who owned a gym in Calgary. Her decision is
yes,
going to be coming out in the next few months or next few weeks. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows? And there's a lot of people that scoffed at me for, not taking the deals that I was offered. But, I've lost so much to give up at the very end for me is not something that I'm able to do. And I truly, I'm innocent. I was in fact the only
absolutely.
one who stood up, and I stood up not just for the unvaccinated. I stood up for every single Canadian.
Hmm. Well, Jess, again, I think what you did is fantastic. It saddens me to know that it's cost you your business. That a
My
20-year
space is still
business.
open, Derek.
Yeah.
Sorry, not open. Sorry, it's still empty. It still
Right.
sits empty almost 2 years to the day. I was the busiest restaurant in Calgary. I had 60 seats on a Friday. I would sell 500 pizzas and do 300 covers. We were the
Wow.
coolest joint in the universe. It's still there. Nobody dares rent it. And that neighborhood that I literally gave 2 decades of my life to. I grew up in the neighborhood next door. I'm born and raised at the confluence of the Elbow and Bow River. That is my home and native land. They
Hmm.
should just let me back in, admit that it was wrong. The
Yeah.
vaccine passport was a heinous crime. All right. I'm not against your vaccine. Do it. Well, I am now, but do whatever
Yeah.
you want. I can understand the psyop and why people succumbed, but yeah, it was never anybody's decision to. It was never anybody's place to judge anybody. And every single restaurant in that community serves the exact same customers that I got shut down for serving.
Right. So you didn't own the building then that you were in. There was a rented property, correct?
I did not know, and that was a terrible, terrible mistake, unfortunately.
Okay.
Had I owned that building, I'd still be shooting my guns out the window. I promise you.
Well, hopefully, and again, I don't mean this as any form of an insult, but hopefully that building stays empty for quite some time as a reminder to the people of that neighborhood
It's a
what
testament
they
to
what
tyranny,
they
a
pushed away.
monument to misery.
Yes.
It is, yeah, a constant reminder of the hate, the division, and the crime that was the vaccine passport.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't hate me. Hate this government that created this division. All I wanted to do was not hate anyone.
Right. So now that you're in BC, what's next for you after your trial's done? Where
I don't
are you
know.
starting up
I
another restaurant or?
So in the very beginning, I had an opportunity to buy the Without Papers building, and it was a whole bunch of money, and the whole deal was predicated on me selling a whole bunch of pizzas. Uh, uh, I Yeah, the deal that the landlord had made me offered on March 16th, it expired on March 16th, 2020, the first day of the apocalypse. And about a week into it, I was like, holy moly, man, I got some big trouble here. Like, I
Mhm.
don't like what I'm seeing. I could see it was a culture of snitches. And I was worried, even though I had a very successful business, I was worried. I mean, everybody was. And long story short, some land came up in British Columbia that was commercial land. And at the exact right moment in time, between myself, my business partner, chef, and my father, we had, exactly as much money as required to buy this little parcel of commercial land with nothing on it. And yeah, we opened up a little pizza place, and it's just a seasonal business. So this will be our third year. I've had some difficulty with local governance. My beliefs and freedom, I think, play a bit of that. But also the way that we did the structure. I mean, it's hard to explain, but
Mm.
yeah, that's where I'm at, and it's not opened yet. I mean, one of the terrible tragedies of what happened without papers was a beautiful relationship, a partnership that existed for 20 years. My yin to his yang. We were unfortunately parted. And 20 years I've been in the restaurant industry, or 25 years, but I've never worked in the kitchen, and my partner the same. He's never worked in the front, and
Right.
without each other, I'm kind of floundering right now. And yeah,
Right.
so yeah, we're trying to get it open. We're shooting for July 1st. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Other than that, I don't know. I have some plans and some dreams, regarding Without Papers and reopening. Whether they come, to fruition or not, I don't know. I've never would have thought I'd be in this situation. I'm 51 years old, and I was successful at what I did. I was very well respected, and I think people, knew that I was one of the few places that was profitable, and had an idea that was
Hmm.
marketable to the community. But because of what I said, a lot of people, or what I did, a lot of people, I think, lost faith in me, thinking that perhaps I'm a loose cannon or something like that. But that was never the case. I've never been politically active in my entire life. I just
Right.
refuse to judge anybody.
It's funny you say that because the amount of people that got into political movement based on the lockdown surprised me because like I've talked about it multiple times that when I grew up as a child, I was always told that it was rude to discuss politics and that you don't really talk about it unless it's a round table discussion where everybody's on the same boat. But it's funny how some lockdowns happen and then all of a sudden everybody's invested. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's good that everybody got involved and more people started to put pressure on the government because like you said earlier, that your restaurant as well as a few other things in Alberta were responsible for pushing the end of the mandates. I question how long the mandates would have gone on without
Forever.
Coots, without your push, without the
forever,
convoy.
100%.
Yeah, yeah, we'd probably still be
There
in
was
it.
no expiry date. Whenever people
No,
come to me, and I have other restaurateurs, oh, they were just temporary measures, Jesse. I'm like, no,
no.
no, there was no. I read it. I read it. I want to be pretty sure what the hell I was doing, and there was no expiration date whatsoever. And had it not been for the action of many, many thousands of Canadians, we'd still be showing a QR code today to get your cheeseburger.
And it's funny because I've always said that to me, the whole pandemic felt like control. Well, not, I was going to say control, but of course it was control. It felt like more like a test about compliance, right?
Yeah,
It's how far can we push the people before they push back, right? It's knowing their boundaries. And as far as like I've discussed the new WHO travel passport that's
yeah,
being pushed to come out, and I said it's funny that they're already saying we're planning for the next pandemic, and I said, well, hold
yeah.
on, you separate the Spanish flu from COVID, you've got a good 100-year gap almost, and you guys are already planning for the next pandemic, and we just ended one. What are you what are you talking about?
Just the
So
test. It was just a test.
yeah,
Climate lockdowns, the digital currency ID, and
yeah.
you wait, you wait. This is going to be a crazy decade, and I hope and pray that people, get right with God and Jesus, and realize that this is truly a spiritual war. And it is my belief that we're leaving an age and entering another. And yeah, it's a great awakening. There's a great many people who realize that we've been lied to by essentially everything for our entire lives. And when they tell you about climate change and the carbon footprint, I'm just like, you know what, dude, you're the carbon they want to reduce. Get
Mhm.
that into your head.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when it comes to the aftermath, everything that's happened since, I've seen again guys like Chris Scott seem to be doing stable, and again, you've got your projects on the go. The businesses that didn't make it, again, as I've said, there I see multiples, even some franchise businesses that went out. I know there's places like Eastside Mario's that shut down mass amounts of locations and things like that. So franchise suffered as well, to an extent. I mean, is there any building back? Do you think? Do you think that we're ever going
I'll
to
tell you
see a
what,
turnaround?
I think the restaurant industry is in a tremendous amount of danger in Canada. It's always been fraught with peril. If 100 restaurants open up today, 90
Mm-hmm.
close next within the next year. But what they forced restaurants to suffer during the apocalypse was truly the damage. I think will take decades to overcome. They literally forced every restaurant in Canada to become indebted to the government of Canada in order to
Mm-hmm.
stay alive. They gave them all those SIBA loans, which are demand loans,
Yep.
which they differentiate from amortizations, where I give you 60 grand, and you on an amortization you pay 1 grand a month for 60 months, but this demand loan is like, we want it back next year unless we want it tomorrow. I was the only restaurant in Canada that paid back. Well, I shouldn't say I was the only one, but I guarantee you I'm one of the very, very few that have paid back that loan. In order for me to pay back that loan, I had to sell the house that we owned in Inglewood that my business partner lived in. And once we sold that house, the government took that loan right off the top, even though I technically was still in business.
Yep.
My corporation was set up. I was receiving a constant stream of revenue through the form of donations. But they, it's a demand loan, and they have the right to take it anytime they want. And every I think I read a stat 2 weeks ago: 83% of restaurants still owe that loan, and they will never pay it back, ever. You owe
Right.
$60,000 to the government of Canada. You'd be best off if you owed that money to the Hells Angels. At least they have scruples and morals and values. The CRA doesn't give two shits about your
No.
business. They will shut you down in a heartbeat just to prevent you from not paying any more. Like, it's insanity. It's insanity. And these restaurants, I pleaded with them. I was like, don't you guys get it? And now at the end of that, after they forced all of these restaurants into debt to slavery, essentially, then they told them to tell 25% of their customers that they're too goddamn dirty to come in the place.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't think that that's going to have some long-term repercussions? You don't think that guy's going to remember that you said he was too dirty to come in here? It
Right.
blows my mind. It still shocks me that not a single restaurant, not a single airline, not a single theater, not a single sports team, nobody has apologized for discriminating healthy customers. It's as if,
Yes.
because the government told them that it was okay to hate, that it was allowed, and that they
Mhm.
have no barrier, no responsibility to it. It's shocking to me, like literally shocking.
Absolutely.
And I press the restaurants and none of them want to talk about it. You think about it, they all dropped it and none of them said anything. None of them
Right.
said anything. None of them said, "Oh, it's dropped," and welcome back, you lepers. There was nothing. Just open the doors and hope they come back. And when they
Yeah.
do come back, never mention the
Yes.
atrocities that you committed ever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Elephant
A
in the room.
disgusting perversion of hospitality. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very surprising because I know, like, even in our household, we had, one of our family members had season tickets for the Flames, and they were going around asking people if they wanted to go to the games because they wouldn't go. They said, "I don't want to go back to the Saddle Dome." They accused me of being dirty. I don't, and it was a shame because I wanted to see that happen more, and
It's
more
funny. I don't think
people
most people
push
understood
back.
that of the passport, that was the exact premise, that
Yeah.
healthy individuals were spreading disease. When people say they don't liken it to the atrocities that happened, under the Third Reich and the Second World War, I think to myself,
Yeah.
you're delusional. Delusional. They literally did the exact same thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
The only difference was that the gold star wasn't worn by the Jews. It was worn by the oppressors in the form of the vaccine passport.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree. It's funny. We had, I've talked about on other streams when my mother passed during the pandemics, and we had the funeral. Now most of her family's in Manitoba, and when we talked about the limited space of funeral that we could have, it was, well, COVID, we don't want to travel and risk getting sick and everything else. And what blew my mind is that it was more a matter of convenience for some people, to use that as an excuse, and bolster their fears, than it was to be honest with themselves or with anybody else. Because when we go to Manitoba to bury my mother's remains, all the Manitoba people show up at the graveside, and it's also, when it's only 2 hours away, you guys want to come, but when it's 15 hours away, it's, oh, nasty virus. It just, the behavior of people shocked the hell out of me.
Yeah.
That this is where we're at in humanity. These are supposed to be us. The whole purpose of history is so we learn from it, to never repeat the nasty things that happen again. And it seems like we took 2 steps back from 2019 to 2023. And it's just, it makes me question, when you look at what goes on today, even in Calgary, with the mayor altering COVID protest bylaws to push other bylaws, for people infringing on children
She
and stuff.
essentially destroyed the right to protest in Calgary.
Yes.
Yeah, with when she hired BLM and Antifa to stop our Freedom March on March 20th or whatever that was of 2021. That was
Yeah.
essentially one of the darkest days in Alberta. The right to peaceful protest was taken
Yes.
away unless it was approved by the government. It was lunacy.
And that was
and then
that
all
was
the
supposed
sheep
to be a
like,
temporary
oh,
measure.
they're not going through the belt line anymore, causing
Yeah.
disruption. Like it was crazy, man. It was crazy.
And I
What a
remember them
psyop that
saying,
was, the NDP standing there like, oh, it's just crazy. Josie.
oh, they're all applauding
Yeah.
it. And it's funny because I remember them saying, well, this is a temporary bylaw. It's a temporary measure. It's only during the pandemic. As soon as that gets
And
lifted,
we're going to take it
and
away after.
no, you give an inch, they take a mile. And that's one thing
Yeah.
I always find funny about it. Now, one thing, to get onto a little bit of a happier note, one thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap things up, Jess, you divulged to me, and we were talking before the show, you are quite the arcade enthusiast. You used to be into the arcades a little bit.
You couldn't get me out of the arcade, and my initials were proudly stamped into almost every console in Alberta and the interior of British Columbia. Yeah, I loved the arcade, loved it. Yeah.
So top 5 arcades of all time. What would you say those are for you?
Like actual arcades?
Yes.
Illusions.
Well, like the games. Top 5 games.
Top 5
say.
games. Oh man, I don't even know if I can. Yeah, go Russian Attack. I always like that. Robotron. Kickman. I think that was. You remember with the balloons that would come through? Was that Kickman? I think that was Kickman. Yeah, and you had to kick the balloon up. It was a really good game.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, we can just go on and on and on. Sinistar. I always loved that one.
Yes.
Defender. Karate Champ. Man,
so you're a classics man.
Yeah, I mean, that was just, that was my era, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I looking in the background there, and I think I saw Dragon's Lair, and or
Yep.
Dragon Slayer, Dragon Slayer,
Dragon's
uh,
Lair.
Dragon's Lair. That's right,
Yeah.
Lair. But I remember the first time I ever saw that game. It was in Illusions on 8th Avenue beside the Hudson's Bay, and it blew my mind. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, how is this even possible?
Right.
I mean, you look at it now, you're just like, okay, left, right, up, down, but it was, yeah, it was a credible time. Yeah, it was a neat time, and pinball too. I mean, I was always a big fan of the pinball as well. There was so many great consoles, yeah, it was a neat time in history, man.
It's funny because you don't see it anymore, and that's part of the reason we built this for the kids,
Yeah.
because I got one machine and they flocked to it and we're like, what is this? And trying to explain to them, well, we used to go to buildings where people would smoke cigarettes and drink and do
Yes,
this all
remember,
day
like right
long.
on the pool. That's why they don't play pinball, because you could put your ashtray on it easier, right? Like
Yeah.
all the
Yeah, it
burns and
was.
the plastic and stuff. Like,
Yeah, good times. It's
yeah,
funny. I there was a place that was like a Chuck E. Cheese in Calgary back when I was like a small kid. I remember my parents,
yeah,
I must have been about 4 years old. They took me to a place called the Enchanted Castle,
yeah,
and it was in Northeast Calgary, and they
yeah,
had a Dragon's Lair machine in there, and it was right next to the Cubert. And I was all about Cubert when I was 4 years old,
yeah.
but as soon as I
Cubert, man.
seen
Yeah,
that TV on top of the Dragon's Lair, and
yeah.
same as you see the cartoon running and going, how does this, like, I thought flying cars by the year 2000 for sure. Like
Oh yeah,
if this is what
yeah.
we're looking at, absolutely it's going to happen.
Little
But
did we know it was a predecessor to locking us in our homes.
absolutely. Well, Jesse, again, I thank you for coming on the show tonight. It's been great to sit and chat with you. I can honestly tell you that should things work out with this mayoral run coming up, should I take Jody Gondek's seat, I would humbly right now like to offer you the opportunity to come back to the city at one point, where I would like to bestow upon you a full uh, apology from those who are like-minded, from those who should have stood in the path of tyranny, and also present you with an award of heroism for what you did. I think that what
Well,
you have
thank you,
done,
sir.
you're definitely a hero of this city. I think you are definitely a pillar of the community still, even though you're not here. And I think people should definitely lead by example when it comes to how you treated not only your community, but the people who worked for you, as well as your customers. I think that, honesty is the best policy in business. And you definitely showed um, what it takes to be a successful business operator. And it's very unfortunate
Yeah, we
that,
always accept it all, both when it was easy and when it was hard.
yeah,
And it is terribly unfortunate that what's happened, but I believe that God has purpose for everything, and that there will be a new direction in my life. I haven't found it yet, but I will soon.
absolutely. Jesse, thanks so much for coming on the show. And thank you to everybody who attended our show tonight. Absolute pleasure to have you guys out in the chat. Jesse, where can people find you?
They can find me on Twitter at WO Pizza 2. My original Twitter was taken down about 2 months ago. So WO Pizza 2. And in the summertime, you can find me in Windermere, British Columbia at Pow Pizza right next to the White House.
Sounds great. Well, we'll try to get up there this summer. Jesse, thank you so much for coming out. And thank you, everybody who came out again. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. And we'll catch you on the next one. Take care.
God bless.